Hey, I want to welcome everyone to episode number 64 of the Kitchen Table Conversations, where we are shaping a new meaning of masculinity. My name is Felix Martinez-Paz. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I work for Esperanza United as the Engaging Men and Boys Program Specialist. Super happy to be here and to taking over and being the host today in today's conversation on the celebration of National Hispanic Heritage Month and learning a little bit about it, about the celebration. And I'm super happy and excited to be with this group of amazing friends. And before we start, let's let you guys introduce yourselves. So go ahead. We can do it popcorn style. So go for it.
Hey there, folks. My name is Hunter. Use he, him, and his pronouns, and I am with the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and super happy to be here with y'all today.
And hey, everybody, my name is Sean Hayes, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I am up in Duluth, Minnesota on a dreary day for sure, and I'm a part of Men as Peacemakers, and happy to be here with all of y'all.
Hey, I'm Sean Elmquist, he, him, his. I'm also in Duluth with Men as Peacemakers.
Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for that watching. And as you may know, National Hispanic Heritage Month is celebrated from September 15 to October 15 in the United States, recognizing the contribution and influence of Hispanic Americans on the history, culture, and achievement of the United States. This celebration, number 15, making the anniversary of the independence on several Latin American countries. From those countries, I think we have Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Those, and as a Puerto Rican, this is something that brings me a lot of joy, not only to talk about the beautiful island where I was born, but also the amazing contributions that all other countries in Latin America have. And with this conversation, I want to also hear from you guys what things you guys know, etc. We'll be talking about food, culture, a little bit of everything. So hopefully it's going to be interesting for all of you guys. So to start, the significance of Hispanic Heritage Month lies in recognizing and the diverse tradition, language, art, and the countless achievements of Hispanic individuals and their communities. It's time for us as Hispanic and Latinos to celebrate our role pretty much the cultural tapestry of the United States, and to acknowledge the enduring influence in various fields also highlights the importance of the cultural diversity and appreciating the heritage of others. And something, like I said before, I hope with this podcast that we can take the time to foster unity, inclusivity, and understanding among all communities, something that's super important, especially when we also understand that we all are connected, that we all have a role to play in this world, specifically when we think about being better men, also being better role models, and take care of communities that are free of gender-based violence and any type of violence. So to start this conversation is to talk important to talk about some of those influential figures and specifically Hispanic that have been recognized or have something to do or been part of the culture that we live here in the United States. And for example, one of the ones that comes to my mind is people like Cesar Chavez, that is a civil rights and labor leader who co-founded Farm Workers Union, advocating for the right of agricultural workers. Is one of those leaders that you can see it in any Latino organization in the United States. Some of the other ones will be like another renowned Mexican painter known for her unique symbolic self-portraits, also because of their unibrow. I don't know if that will be nice to say, but the unibrow is something that she's recognized, and there's basketball players that also are proud, and I think it's AD who have it, and he were part of himself, and it's something that we should acknowledge and not see it as something that is not common, just because I know a lot of people like to do their eyebrows. I do my eyebrows all the time, especially because I have really bushy. That's probably something of being Latino too, being a little bit hairy. But some of these things, going back on another leader, probably when we think about historic Heritage Month, is Gabriel Garcia Marquez, is another Colombian author and Nobel Prize winner that celebrate one of his famous books. It's called 100 Years of Solitude. It's very famous, and it's one of those books that any Latino have been able to read. When we think about the LGBTQ community and leaders, also we need to think in Silvia, a Puerto Rican, Venezuelan American transgender woman who co-founded the Street Transvestite Action Revolution, in other words, STAR, with Marsha P. Johnson shortly after the Stonewall Uprising. So there's another Latino leader that have left his mark in the history of the United States. Some other ones that I can mention is Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. She's a 17th century Mexican-run poet and writer. She's a symbol of early feminism, especially the movement and the independence of women. So we also have women's in there. And this is just a few of many. You know, we have the Chicago movement, a civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s that create a huge impact. Address social, political, economic injustices by Mexicans, Americans in the United States. To Clemente, when we think about sports from Puerto Rico, and a humanitarian who died, unfortunately, doing a trip with food to a country that went through an earthquake. So there's been a lot of Oscar de la Renta when you think about design and clothing. Is a huge fashion designer from the Dominican Republic. Selena Quintanilla, beloved Tex-Mex artist who continues to influence and inspire generations. So as a Latino, I mean, these figures and movement have left lasting impacts, you know, in Hispanic culture, history, and the world at large. And it should be highlighted during each month to educate and inspire others, especially newer generations. I think when we think storytelling, it's a good way to continue embracing those or history or legacy or culture, music, food, etc. And sometimes through remembering these leaders, these past leaders or leaders in our communities, it hopefully can inspire us to do a little bit of that, to embrace and also continue doing a good work. So I would love to hear from you guys when you're doing a podcast about Hispanic Heritage Month. What's the first thing that comes to your guys' mind? You know, what kind of things came to your mind that you say, oh, maybe I can talk about this. This is something that have influenced me or the community where I live. I'd love to hear a little bit from you guys. If any of these, you know, leaders have back in your life, and also if there's any other ones that come to your mind. So I'll stop for a second. I'll let you guys talk a little bit.
Well, I gotta say, I'm just really excited that we're finally here having this conversation, because I know we've tried to have it a couple of times previously, and just, you know, life things come up. So I feel excited about it. And actually, you know, for me, honestly, I was really excited to hear you mention Felix Sylvia Rivera, because that is actually the first person I was thinking about. And we, you know, celebrate her a lot around Pride Month in June for the queer community and trans community. And so, I mean, she has had, I would say, a really big impact in how I think that I have learned to do organizing and advocating in our queer and trans community here in Duluth. Really learning about their stories, our trans and queer elders, especially those of color, who were really at the forefront and continue to be at the forefront of, pushing human rights and LGBTQ plus rights. So she has definitely had a huge influence. And then, to be honest, the other thing that came to mind is I have a lot to learn. And I was thinking that, there's probably a lot of folks that I know who, aren't Hispanic or a part of those communities, and really don't know a whole lot about it. So I'm just excited to hear some of those names that you shared, and I recognize some of them, and I want to now, go and learn more about these folks. And so I sort of debated saying that, because it's like, we're on this thing, we're supposed to sort of be experts, but that's not at all what any of us are. And so to just be honest and vulnerable and to throw that out there, that I don't know a whole lot, but I am very excited to learn more. So thank you for the opportunity, Felix.
Yeah, thanks so much for offering that introduction, Felix. And some of the folks that had came to mind for me right away was also like Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Hopefully I'm saying that name correctly. But then also I think Rosie Hidalgo, who at Esperanza United, I think has previously been the director of the Violence Against Women's Act as well, and some of the great work that she has done. I have had an opportunity just to chat with her once or twice, and that was really great. Something that I'm also thinking about is the fact of kind of like institutionalized labels that are put on communities. So kind of being aware of kind of the legacy of to my understanding, the label of Hispanic and everything from the United States government, and how we kind of label communities. So I think there's kind of this phrase of we try to, contemplate rather than have compassion within community, and try to further explain things rather than just trying to be in compassionate community with folks. So that's something that I'm thinking about, and how each and every single community is different, right? And so lumping up millions of folks under one single label can be hurtful for sure. So thinking about that, and then also what Sean had mentioned, I'm really excited to learn today too. I am also a person, just being honest, like I had reached out to Sean a few weeks ago, like, oh my gosh, what do I need to prepare? Like, what do I have to do? And I think that's like a white supremacist tenet that I'm really struggling and have tried to work on, like this idea of perfectionism, but just really trying to engage myself in being a part of these conversations through humility and integrity and authenticity, because we all have so much to learn. So again, super jazzed to be a part of this conversation.
I would echo some of what Sean and Hunter said. It's funny for me, when I think about this kind of like Central South America, some of the Caribbean, the biggest thing, for one thing, I as an artist, a lot of what comes to mind for me is like literature, poetry, Neruda, Borges. And one of my favorite writers is Roberto Bolaño, who's a Chilean writer. And, to be honest, like there is an amazing amount of stuff that comes out of Central and South America, and this tradition, continues into the United States, of this kind of Hispanic tradition in parts of those parts of the world, of amazing criticism of capital and the American empire. just some of the best anti-capitalist art that really happens in the world comes out of South Central America and the Caribbean, and obviously the the kind of political movements that go along with that. But that's something that I spend a lot of time with, and it means a lot to me. So that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. But I'm no expert, and yeah, we're talking about big themes here, but.
Thank you, everyone. I think I'm a Latino. I'm not even an expert. I was born in Puerto Rico, but I have the privilege to also live in the Dominican Republic and now live here in the United States. You have an opportunity to learn from other land, their culture, their food, meet their people. I think that's something that I really enjoy since I was little, and now I do it. And I try to travel, and something that I do with my daughters. I have tried them to give the experience to them to travel, to go to different countries, different people, just because there's so much richness, so much to get from all of us. And when we think of the United States, we're a huge melting pot of different cultures, and get the best from each of them and embrace it. And also, learn about dishes, about culture, music. It's amazing when you have that opportunity to do that. And one of my goals with my daughters was to travel all 50 states before they went to college, just because we want them to experience and meet the states, learn about key each state, the history of each state. So we were able to only get close to 40, in the low 40s, but I think it is something that I remember with a lot of joy. And when we think about Latinos and the history of Latinos, but I always, when I talk to the Latino youth, that I try to encourage to embrace your culture, to don't be ashamed about it, to don't be ashamed of your status if you're elite, to don't be, sad because you don't speak the language properly. I don't speak the language properly. I think I've been here in the United States for around 24 years, and English is not perfect at all, and I'll try to do my best, but I struggle, a little bit with it. But we go maybe a little bit deeper on that. It's also important to talk about the contributions, like we mentioned before, but also acknowledge what Hunter mentioned about Rosa Hidalgo. Rosa Hidalgo used to be your public policy director, and now she's the director. I don't know the specific of her, but it's amazing to start seeing communities of colors in those important roles in our government, in our cities, in our schools, in our jobs, just because it's that we're starting to break barriers. We're starting to realize that the importance of all of us, all those gifts that we all have, and the importance of together if we want to commit to a goal, for example, of ending violence. So it's super important, but also to talk about the fun stuff too, like food, for example, Latino food. So I'm told sure a lot of people know a little bit about, especially with Taco Tuesday, something that's been more something new in the United States. But the Hispanic cuisine, including the Mexican, Cuban, Puerto Rican, and others, have become integral as part of the American food culture. So I would love to hear from you guys. Do you guys have been able to, I assume, to have those burritos, paella? It's like a dish from Spain, but do you guys have any favorite? It could be a popcorn style. This doesn't need to be everybody have to say something, but what comes to your mind of food? Anything, any favorite Latino food for you guys?
I'm gonna just chime in and say tacos for sure.
Any type of
Love
tacos
me.
in particular? Any in particulars or?
That's a good question. I feel like I have been attempting and I will just call out like a TikTok trend of white people tacos. But I've been trying my best to make carnitas. So doing that in like a crock pot, cooking the meat all day slow. And it's a little challenging for me with my little one who just turned 5, but still has a very bland palate, I'll say, at this point. So I can't make things too spicy for us. But yeah, it's been really fun to learn a little bit about that. And one of my good friends from childhood has definitely been giving tips and tricks here and there. So I'll update her. Look, how's it looking? And did you try this? Did you add this? So definitely appreciating those tips and tricks, and my kid actually does like the tacos so far.
That's awesome, because I think hopefully in one of our future podcasts, maybe next year, maybe we can, share a dish instead of if it's in the kitchen table conversation, we can do it actually from the kitchen and maybe cook something. I mean, I think that's a great way to meet people, is through food, item. And it's funny because most of the time in our people, we all gather in the kitchen. So I think that's a common place where people feel happier. They have food. They can, have some snack and keep the conversation going. So it's really, really good. Any other favorite dishes from you guys, from other Sean and Hunter? Anything that pop up to your mind?
Well, for one thing, something I've been thinking about a lot is like pre-colonial food and foodways. There's like so many foods that come from the Americas. About a year ago, maybe must have been a year ago, I got a physical and I found out I was like pre-diabetic. So I've had to kind of change my diet with mixed results. I have like a really crazy sweet tooth, which is part of how I ended up in this situation. But so I've changed my diet. So one thing I've come to really appreciate is like avocados, just like sweet potatoes, all these things that, are just like, we take them for granted now, but they really come from the Americas. And so, I've just been thinking about like, take somewhere like a region, again, I'm not like an expert, but something I'm thinking about the last year is like the Yucatan, just that big geographic area, like the foodways that come out of there, the way that they use chilies and like the way that they incorporate these foods like corn and tomatoes and sweet potatoes and stuff into their cuisine. I don't know. That stuff is really cool. Just like more kind of older ways of making food and thinking about food,
Yeah, I think for me, similar to what Sean Hayes had mentioned, I feel like most of the food that I'm familiar with is this Americanized version of like Tex-Mex food, Taco Bell, things like that. But growing up, I had some friends. Unfortunately, I don't know specifically their ethnicity, but growing up and having dinner with them and having some like authentic tamales and everything, those were fantastic, I recall. But I think just the general idea, speaking to what you're talking about, Felix, that food is so important, so cultural, and so community building. So a number of us had the Men of Masculine Folks retreat a few weeks ago, and just the connection that we were able to build just making food together, the conversations that would naturally come up, and the education and wisdom that we've all been able to impart on one another. And especially I feel like with certain cultures, like especially having that like intergenerational aspect to it as well, I think that's so important. So and I always think this kind of concept or idea of like food is love, you know, like it takes time, like it takes like specialization, like everyone kind of has their own little twist on a recipe, right? And you know, when folks are sick, like my partner is sick right now, and making food for her and things like that, I think food is just so important within community.
Absolutely, and it's also a way for to break stereotypes, especially for me as a Latino. I remember growing up and telling me every time she was on the kitchen, she joined her. She was like, "No, go with your dad. The kitchen is for women." You know, so sometimes unconsciously we're teaching our kids, you know, those stereotypes that they're so harmful. But now with the newer generations, you know, with social media, I think we've been more open and learning more about them. And also, but men belong to the kitchen. Men also need to, you know, do some of those chores that normally we're not supposed to do, you know, when we're little, or at least my parents personally didn't. Talking about my experience, of course, I'm totally sure everyone have a different experience growing up, but as a Latino, you know, food is essential. It's super important, and what you hit the spot right there. But also, like food is also music. You know, music genres like salsa, merengue, reggaeton. You know, people like right now like Bad Bunny that are putting that reggaeton music and the different level. Even when the lyrics, you know, when the music sounds great, when you attention to the lyrics, maybe the lyrics are not the best. There's a lot of objectification, a lot of abuse and violence in the music that also provided the opportunity to engage with the users with that same music, you know, being sure they're listening to, but at the same time, it's part of our culture and things that we normalize. But that doesn't mean we need to agree with it, but at least to open the space and hopefully change some of that lyrics, you know, continue with the same rhythms, the same culture, but, you know, put more attention to that and the impact that sometimes that music have in other people. But language is another thing. I think language is the second most spoken language in the United States. So it's something that at least for Latinos and with you, the Latino you, that I always try to embrace and try to let them know, you know what, you're bilingual. Let's take advantage of this. You know, if you see someone that want to learn, just time, you know, teach them, because it's something that connects us at the same time and open doors also to other opportunities. So being a Latino and being bilingual is obviously is something that we can take advantage of it. Art literature, that's something that Sean was mentioning. There's a lot of Hispanic artists and writers and filmmakers that have made remarkable contributions to American art and literature. Now my English is turning into a mess, but yes, yeah. So you know, there's no art part in science, medicine, Hispanic or Latino haven't touched or been part of it. Education, obviously, the rights movement, you know, the workforce and businesses. You know, the Hispanic community contribution have not American culture, but also importance of the diversity and inclusivity, you know, that is needed, especially because, you know, when you think about the United States, you know, everybody trying a land that is not theirs. You know, everybody think this is my land. You Latinos go, you know, this is not your land, when in reality it's not even their lands. You know, if you're not a Native American, how you can also claim, you know, a space or a land. Or so that's why it's so important to understand all the harm that, you know, that colonialism, America, the trauma that is involved with it, and the importance of talk, and be sure to don't commit those same mistakes that were done in the past. You know, we have an opportunity right now as adults and as individuals to make a difference, and maybe look at that past from it, so we cannot commit those same mistakes again. And when I think about challenges in the Latino community, some of them is those stereotypes, those assumptions that all Hispanic are undocumented, you know, that we all speak Spanish, or we're all from same place. They're all from Mexico. We're all from Puerto Rico. We're all from Venezuela, Cuba, and these stereotypes can hurt people, and don't allow them to be themselves or be the best version of themselves. Barriers that a lot of Latinos, when they're moved to America facing, violence in their countries. One example is right now the situation in Venezuela, where my spouse come from, my partner come from. So seeing, people leaving their country, leaving everything to start over, are in a place that, they don't wish, that they don't understand your realities, is very difficult. So when people think in undocumented people think that they come here because they want to, and it's not real. When you leave everything to start over, it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of someone to leave everything to start over in a different place. So we need to be more aware of, understand the discrimination that these individuals go through. I'm a Latino, I'm white, but being white is being a camouflage for me to avoid a lot of those situations, and the difference with other people of darker skin that comes to places and they're judged just because of their accent or just because where they're from. So there's a lot of challenges that have been harmful for us that we face every single day, but we work to teach others about our realities, and hopefully to be sure they understand that when we work together, we're bigger. We can do more things. We can have things, and understand that cultural insensitivity that exists, out there. But it's not until we up and we listen and we learn a little bit and we listen to those stories of those most impacted, is when we realize and we understand what is our role and what we can do to do that. And for Latino men, for me as a Latino man doing this work, specifically of masculinity, is been eye-opening, because make me understand my privilege time, all those that we have learned in the Latino community that we need to change. It is perfect, but I think the Latino community has something that for me is very special, is the love for the family, that we care for each other, that we care for our food or music, and that's something that doesn't matter where you go, and you listen to your music, you listen to smell any of those dishes, you remember of the place you were born and the importance of embracing any culture. In this month we're celebrating Latino Heritage Month, but the Latino Heritage Month is not the only culture that exists. We should celebrate them all and embrace them all if we want to live in inclusive and places that everybody is their best. So I feel I've been talking too much, and I'm not allowing you guys to talk also. But what things come to your mind when you hear about those challenges that Latino go through? How do you guys see them in your circles? Is something that you see and also with other cultures? What comes to your mind when you think of that, or when maybe you hear for the first time some of those challenges, and maybe we assume, or sometimes we don't even know that they exist? What comes to your mind when you hear this? And I know that's a deep question, so we're in a kitchen table conversation, so feel free to share whatever comes to your mind.
I mean, I think this question of, kind of like immigration, undocumented immigration, or however you want to look at it, is just going to be one of the central things that defines, the next generation in the United States. What response there is to it, there's going to be people moving all over the world, I think. I mean, there always are, but I think that that is going to increase in intensity. And I think you can already see the political and cultural reaction to that. I can't believe how much it's intensified just as a white man growing up in northern Minnesota. I think when I was a kid, there's a sort of looming kind of generalized white fear of mass immigration. But it was pretty abstract. And then, yeah, so I just think as bodies are actually moving across the planet, the way that we meet those challenges and the way that we embrace people into our communities and the way we take care of each other or don't is going to be the most defining feature of the next, 25 years. That's just my lay of the land. So first of all, I hope that we can learn from, in the United States, not that I'm particularly but that's where I live. So hopefully we can learn from history for once. There's a lot to be learned there and gleaned from lessons of history. There have been a lot of different ways of colonization and immigration, sanctioned or otherwise, state sponsored or illegal. And I just think it's really easy when a group of people moves in, whether it's sanctioned by the state or whether it's not, whether it's a movement of colonization, whether people are being forced out. In the moment, it's very hot. Everyone's very reactive to it. We see a lot of this, right? But then a couple generations in, as people are integrated into the collective society, people start to look at this stuff in a different way, right? And they're like, oh, now it's very funny, the northern Minnesota version of Mexican food is it's Tex-Mex, but it's a Canadian Tex-Mex. It's just sour cream and so much iceberg lettuce. And it's any spice is really and I grew up with that stuff. Sometimes at my house, I love spicy food. I love when we talk about food, I can go on forever. But there's also this thing where, my fiance and the kids it's just we're just going to make mom tacos. And they're my wife's from Bemidji. It's Bemidji style. It's the Ortega packet in the ground venison. It's they're not spicy. There's a crunchy taco shells, but the only thing that gives it any relationship to tacos at all. But it's this deep ancestral memory to us. And how many generations does that go back? It's I'm sure that for somebody like my mom, it was she had her first Mexican food probably in the 70s, It was wow, spicy. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I imagine that's what the reaction was. It's just amazing how stuff, people integrate so many of these things. And at the time, everybody's so uncomfortable, but as things settle, it becomes our culture. It becomes our way of life. And so I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking about. There's a lot of reactionaries who are just we need to build a wall. And it's for one thing, that's not possible. Not to put not to make this too controversial, but it's you can't stop people from moving around the world. It's not possible. Many have tried. So it's what are we going to do instead? So I don't know. That's what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, Sean, you got me with the sour cream and iceberg lettuce. I was cackling over here on that one. But that really made me think about being a cross-cultural, intentional and authentic ally as well, right? And so what's kind of resonated with me is an experience that I had with an organization called Healing Roots here in Minneapolis. And they're an organization that works with folks of European descent to rediscover white folks' ancestral roots to then begin anti-racist work. And I think that's really important when we're talking about these conversations, because generally white folks such as myself say like, oh, I'm just white, I'm a mutt from all these different countries, right? In reality, like, we come from different cultures that have these foods, that have all these practices, everything. And so I think it's so easy for white folks to just ignore that, right? And really just envision race, when we really should be talking about culture and what these practices are, right? And so I think for folks who perhaps might struggle being kind of a cross-cultural ally, like really beginning to dig into your own ancestral roots to find that community connection, to then be able to build that out further and further as well. And I think as what we're doing here, just learning so much, and it really, as Sean just mentioned, like, we're constantly and will forever be moving throughout the world, constantly crossing paths and interacting with countless different folks from different backgrounds and experiences, right? And so how can we ground ourselves in these conversations in our own histories to then build more histories together moving forward?
I really appreciate you mentioning that. I know, Hunter, you had mentioned that at the retreat. You were kind of sharing about that experience with learning more about your own cultures. And that is something I'm very curious about as well for myself. And the other things I think that are coming to mind, I think, both of y'all kind of mentioned, but I mean, was it just like last week? Or, I mean, it feels like we've been stuck in this place of just constant violence happening all around us right now, and in other countries. And but I mean, recently Biden went against his original promise that he wouldn't continue building that wall. And then, not that I know many of the details, but saw in the headlines that due to violence happening at the border, that he said, yeah, go ahead and build however much more of this wall. And yeah, I guess what comes to mind and maybe to heart for me is just where is our compassion as people? Because I think you're both exactly right. Like, we're going to continue to see folks moving. We're seeing folks moving up to the Midwest a lot more as well. Like, I think about climate change and things that just naturally, like, folks have to shift and migrate and move. And so I think a lot about that, like, when we're talking about building communities that are across cultures, that are inclusive of all of the different cultures. Like, we have to, like, we can't lose compassion. And I feel like it sort of comes down to this, like, it's us versus them kind of mentality. And I think it's not that at all. It's all of us on this planet together, really, like, learning how to do this together in community, and how to care for each other across cultures. And I think I worry a lot about this coming year with this presidential election coming, and I just think that we're going to hear more and more and more about illegal aliens, and think like all of that sort of, like, the buzzwords and the stereotypes, like you mentioned, Felix. I really am dreading that, when it comes to so many communities here in the United States who are not white and cisgender, and all of those sort of privileged places. So I guess, yeah, that's sort of the last thing on my mind is, as we hear more and more of those stories, as we see it more and more in the news and in debates and all of that, I'm wondering how we can be aware. I think it's really easy, especially for white folks, to just say, hey, I don't want to look at the news today. when really I think it's important for us to be aware, and I need to work on this myself for sure. But just wondering, like, what does it look like for those of us who are not part of the Hispanic communities, how we can show up for our friends and community members in ways that feels helpful and feels supportive and yeah, just as we see. I mean, it's, the violence isn't going to stop, the hatefulness and greed and fight for individual rights and ownership of land and all of that. I think it's always going to be a thing. And so I guess I'm also just feeling particularly grateful for like getting to know you, Felix, for the last like 7 or 8 years, and being able to build our relationship, because you've been such a huge influence to me in my own walk, trying to figure out how to be a man in this country, in this world, in a good way that is not constantly causing all of the harm. So just wanted to express that as well.
Thank you, guys. It's incredible. I feel supported, and I know are amazing role models. For me, it's an honor to be with you guys and share this space and learn from you guys. I think you guys are my mentors too. So I'm very grateful. It's really interesting also to listen, your stories. And when I hear Sean talking about spicy, Puerto Ricans don't eat spicy food. Us pepper is spicy. So some make fun of that, considering that when I share space with people from Mexico, they really like spicy food. I cannot eat at all. So when I go to restaurants, I always need to ask, if this stuff is spicy, it's really spicy? Because most of the time they say it's not a spice, it's not a spicy, but when you try it, it's spicy. So, you need to learn from that and learn from those stories. It's hard, like when Sean mentioned in the news, it's so important to educate ourselves, but it's sad at the same time when you turn on the news and when you see people playing and messing around, politics, using, the border as a point to push to their agendas, and as soon the elections are over, then they stop talking about the wall. The same happened with DACA students. They talk about DACA during politics time, election time. Then when elections are done, they stop talking about it. They move also those Latinos that can vote. They excite them with these laws that they're gonna do, and at the end they don't do anything because they only use it just for political purposes. So we need to do more, and it's not till we talk about these things that we realize that when we think about those stereotypes, and to do that, because when we think about it, we think only in Latinos, but there's a lot of undocumented community here from Europe that we don't talk about. Just because they're white, it's not a problem just because of the color. So some of the ways we can battle all this nonsense is through education and awareness. So promote education and awareness to dispel all those stereotypes, that increase the understanding of the diversity within the Hispanic community. Also promote inclusivity. This not only work with people of color, but people that, from the LGBTQ community. I mean, are together, we all bring our own stories. It's not till we talk, till we are more open, and we're open to educate ourselves and create that awareness that we can, understand that, advocating for equal opportunities, is something that's super important. Celebrate our achievements, is another one that, help us to lift, made by the Hispanic or the Latino community, and the positive impact that they also have. Cultural exchange is another. That's something that I mentioned before about traveling, going to different countries, learning their culture, learning their reality, make us more aware of their reality. This experience, especially when you meet them, so you can, provide them with a space that they're gonna feel respected. They're gonna feel, that they're at home. That there's something that's super, super, super important. Also, support organizations, community organizations, and or sometimes those communities out there, specifically when they would tell sometimes Latinos to go back home when they're just going back to where they used to live, in California, because that used to be Mexico. So how you can tell people to go when that's, where they're. So it's creating that awareness that it make us better individual, better person, addressing all those challenges, and especially through education and awareness, I think, and policy changes, I think is the way to go. That I think that should be the best way possible. But I think we're getting close to the end of this conversation, and I've been very grateful to have this conversation. And hopefully, all these people out there listen to this conversation, maybe start questioning themselves and learning a little bit. I know I didn't hit every single spot, but I try to, talk a little bit about those leaders, about every single day and what we can do in order to create that everybody feel welcome, that everybody feel the best version of themselves, and we understand that we all have capacity to create this space. One, living safe, everybody's respected regardless of their gender, their race, their sexual preference, and we have the capacity. So again, I'm super grateful to be with you guys in this space, and I want to leave with this quote from going back to Sylvia Rivera. Sorry, I was trying to remember something that she said that I think not only impact Latinos, but impact to a lot of those BIPOC communities and individuals out there that sometimes don't feel that belong to a place. And this is what she said. She said, "We have to be visible. We should not be ashamed of who we are. We are numerous. There are many of us out there. We have to be visible." With those words from Sylvia Rivera, we're not alone. We're a community, and we all belong to this world, this beautiful world that we have, and we need to take care of it. And taking care of ourselves is just one of those many steps that we need to take in order to achieve that. So thank you, all of you guys, again, for taking the time to be here and talking about the topic today and the importance of being ourselves, open and love each other regardless where you're from or who. Thank you. So I don't know if any of you guys have something else to share, something new. Otherwise, I'll move to the closing. So thank you, everyone. And next year we can do the recipe thing. Maybe we can do some cooking. So we'll go for that.
Well, I just want to say thanks again for this great conversation, because I feel like I learned a lot and I have more to learn. And so, I guess sort of my final thought, and I'll let, Sean and Hunter chime in as well. And then I can kind of wrap us up with all of that stuff. Is just, I feel like when we as humans can embrace all of who we are, including all of the things about our cultures that are meaningful and beautiful. I just feel like that's the future that we're working towards, right? Where we can really live expansively into the wholeness of who we are. And so just appreciating you, Felix, and Hunter and Sean as well, and everybody else who's been able to join us today.
I would just briefly add, certainly very appreciative of you, Felix, and knowing that your name is certainly within the very influential folks for me as well. And you as a human being who has taught me a ton about masculinity and strength outside of just the traditional definition of what we understand strength as in our society. And just being a person that I can really reach out to and connect with. So I really appreciate you, Felix, and also learning from Sean as well.
Yeah, thank you all. It's great to be here talking to you all and seeing all your faces. Felix, I appreciate you, especially for leading us today. Yeah, I would echo what other people said. I think there's a lot that we could talk about, and we'll be able to talk more in the future when it comes to things like masculinity. But I just have been thinking about how, everything is kind of, I think we're in a period of where a time when everybody's very turned inward. But, I think history keeps moving forward, and pretty soon it's going to be time to kind of face outward. And that means, talking to people and working together with people and doing stuff in the world and not just theorizing about it. So I think that is a great opportunity. So I'm glad to be talking about all this stuff with you. And I appreciate the relationship that I have with you guys. So thanks.
Awesome. Well, I hope that all of y'all who have tuned in have enjoyed this conversation as much as we all have. And we just want to say thank you again for joining us for what is our 64th live kitchen table conversation, where we are, each conversation trying to shape new meanings of what masculinity can be, authentic, caring, and thoughtful, and so much more. So thank you all for tuning in. As a reminder, we hold these conversations every other Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. This one's a little bit different because we've had to reschedule a couple of times. So this will be dropping tomorrow as a recording, but we hope that you'll be able to tune in the next time, which will be on Thursday, November 2nd at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Join us live, and we love to have y'all participate and share your comments and questions and stories as we are having the conversation. And if you happen to have a certain topic in mind that you'd like to hear us talk about, let us know. Or if you want to come and join us on a kitchen table conversation in the future, we would love to have you. We really enjoy bringing in guests, people we're connected to in community, to share more about your stories and how masculinity is showing up and how you're showing up in your masculinity. So don't forget, you can like us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. We are working on a podcast version of this as well. So definitely stay tuned for those details as we roll that out. And yeah, I think that's it. So we encourage you to have a conversation like this with your family, with your friends, coworkers. And yeah, check into some of the folks, the cultures, the music, the food that were talked about today. We just encourage you to do that. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will look forward to seeing you back in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everyone.